Today, we're going to tackle 1,000 years of Islamic history, all in one go. We're going to see empires rise and fall, watch how new ideas completely changed the world, and track how power shifted again and again, creating the world that we know today.
You know, back in late antiquity, the Arabian Peninsula was kind of seen as a backwater, especially compared to the great empires of the time. Nobody could have predicted that it would give birth to a civilization that would eventually span continents. So, how on earth did that happen? Well, that's the big question we're going to explore.
So, here's our roadmap for this journey. We'll kick things off with the origins and the absolute explosion of the faith. Then, we'll see an empire forged in its incredible Golden Age. After that, we'll cover its fracture, the Mongol storm that changed everything, and finally, the new empires that rose from the ashes.
Okay, so our story begins way back in the 6th and 7th centuries. This is where a new faith and a new state just burst onto the scene with lightning speed, completely redrawing the map of the known world. Let's just quickly walk through this foundational timeline. Around 570, the Prophet Muhammad is born in Mecca. Now fast forward to 622, the migration to Medina. This moment is so pivotal, it actually marks year 1 of the Islamic calendar. But then his death in 632 creates a huge succession crisis because he hadn't named a clear heir. This leads to the creation of the Rashidun Caliphate, led by the first 4 rightly guided caliphs who oversaw a period of just massive, unbelievable expansion.
So to solve the succession crisis, they came up with the new title, Caliph or Khalifa, which literally means successor. And this wasn't just some political role, you know? The Caliph was the religious, the social, and the military leader of the entire community. It was a position of immense power and responsibility, all rolled into one.
And right away, this question of succession created the single most significant split in Islamic history. As you can see here, those who would become Sunnis believed the leader should be chosen based on merit and their connection to the Prophet. But others, who became known as Shias, argued that leadership was divinely appointed to Muhammad's family, specifically to his son-in-law Ali. And what started as a political disagreement would grow into a deep and lasting religious divide. Okay, so after that initial period of debates and even civil wars over succession, one powerful family, the Umayyads, seized control. And with them, they established the very first great Islamic dynasty.
The Umayyads made 3 huge, decisive changes. First, they moved the capital out of Arabia and into the much more strategic city of Damascus. Second, they totally transformed the caliphate into a hereditary monarchy. Power was now passed from father to son. And third, they launched another incredible wave of conquests, forging an empire that stretched all the way from modern-day Spain to Central Asia.
But, you know, even this incredible expansion had its limits. The Battle of Tours in 732, fought against the Franks, was a major turning point. It basically halted the Umayyad advance into Western Europe, and it defined the empire's northwestern frontier for centuries to come.
But the Umayyads weren't invincible. They faced internal rebellions and were eventually overthrown in a pretty bloody revolution. Their successors, the Abbasids, are the ones who ushered in what we now call the Islamic Golden Age.
The Abbasids shifted the empire's whole center of gravity once again, and they did it by building a magnificent new capital from scratch, Baghdad. For a while, this amazing circular city was the largest and wealthiest city on Earth, a true global hub for trade, culture, and science.
And this is where you can really feel the intellectual energy of the era. It was fueled by immense wealth and this incredible meeting of Greek, Persian, and Indian traditions. Baghdad's famous House of Wisdom was like an engine for discovery, translating ancient knowledge into Arabic. This, in turn, fueled massive original scholarship in medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. It was truly a time of incredible cultural and scientific flourishing.
But of course, even golden ages come to an end. While the Abbasids were still technically in charge, their real political control started to weaken. The empire began to fracture, leading to a much more decentralized and, well, complicated political landscape. Yeah, this slide does a great job of showing just how complex things got. You had the Sunni Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad, but he was becoming more of a symbolic religious figurehead. Meanwhile, over in Cairo, the Shia Fatimids established their own rival shadow caliphate. And then, a new force emerged, the Seljuk Turks, who came to hold the real military power. And this is where we see a totally new title of power come into play, the Sultan. The
The Turkic Seljuks used this title to show everyone who was really in charge. This created a new kind of separation of powers. The Arab caliph provided the religious legitimacy, while the Turkic sultan held the actual military and political control.
And as if all this internal division wasn't enough, a new external threat appeared on the horizon. In 1095, European forces launched the First Crusade. They ended up establishing crusader states along the Mediterranean coast that would add a whole new layer of conflict to the region for the next 200 years.
But believe it or not, the Crusades were just a prelude to a much, much bigger cataclysm. From the far eastern steppes, an unstoppable force was moving west, a force that would bring an entire era to a violent and definitive end.
The year is 1258. Hulagu Khan, grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan, leads the Mongol army to the gates of Baghdad itself. After the caliph refused to surrender, the Mongols besieged the city, completely razed it to the ground, and massacred its inhabitants. The great libraries, including the House of Wisdom, were utterly destroyed.
The end of the caliph himself was just brutal and deeply symbolic. As the source material vividly puts it, he was rolled into a carpet and trampled by horses, a way to avoid spilling royal blood directly onto the earth. And with that single act, 500 years of Abbasid rule, and really the entire classical age of Islam, was over.
It's a truly devastating moment in history. But from those ashes, new powers did emerge. New dynasties that would not only survive, but actually thrive, reshaping the Islamic world all over again.
So first up were the Mamluks in Egypt, a state founded by former slave soldiers. In 1260, they did what no one else could. They actually defeated the Mongols at the Battle of Ain Jalut, finally halting their advance. And then they went on to crush the last of the Crusader states, earning them the incredibly prestigious title, Defenders of Islam.
Now, as we head into the early modern period, three major Islamic empires come to dominate the landscape. People often call them the gunpowder empires because their success was built on new military technologies like cannons and firearms. You had the Ottomans in Anatolia, the Safavids over in Persia, and the Mughals down in India.
The Ottoman Empire was the absolute behemoth of the three. After they conquered Constantinople in 1453, the Ottoman Sultan eventually claimed the title of caliph, becoming the new leader of the Sunni world. And their empire, the very last caliphate in history, would endure for an astonishing 600 years. So just think about it. From a small community in Arabia to vast globe-spanning empires, this 1,000-year story is just one of constant flux, adaptation, and reinvention. Power shifted from Arabs to Persians to Turks, capitals moved, new ideas flourished, and old certainties were shattered. It all leaves us with one final question to ponder. What forces of change will define the next 1,000 years?